So you've picked up an X100VI, or you've had one for a couple of months now, or maybe even over a year, but the photos you're getting out of the camera just aren't quite living up to the hype or your expectation. Well, luckily for you, you're not alone. There's a lot of us out there that struggled when we first got our first Fujifilm or our first X100VI. However, there's a few things that I've done since owning it for over a year and over 10,000 shots, where now all the JPEGs that I get out of this camera absolutely love, and it's become one of my favorite cameras I've ever owned. First point we're going to talk about is focal length. Now you might notice on this version of my camera, I actually have the 50mm equivalent attachment. However, for most people, obviously they don't have this attached and they're using the 35mm equivalent. Now it's a bit of a funny focal length. For me, I traditionally used to use a 50mm. That's why I love having this 50mm on. And 35mm is just weird. It's not wide enough sometimes, but also you don't get that nice bokeh that you might get with this, or it's not sort of cropped in enough. Now you have got the inbuilt crop that you can use. However, it's something that I think it takes quite a while to get good at and learn how to use. I can see why Fuji went for a 35mm equivalent. I think for street photography or travel photography, it is a good all-rounder. You know, if you move a few steps forward or back, you'll get maybe the desired shot that you're after. But there's definitely a mind shift, especially because we're not using a traditional zoom lens here. You're moving with your feet, and that does change the shots that you get and how maybe you used to get them. So I think there's an adjustment to that. There's an adjustment to the focal length where you'd normally stand from a subject, all sorts of things like that, which will obviously alter your perception of how good the photos are that you're getting. Now, this isn't just for X100VI users. Anyone that uses a Fujifilm camera will talk about the custom Fujifilm recipes you can get. You've got my lovely website that I've got, where I've got some Fujifilm recipes for you guys, or you've got the better known Fuji Weekly, you've got Fuji Simulations. There's loads of websites out there, loads of creators that have their own recipes, and they're super powerful and super good to use because it allows you to take the photos that you like. You don't have to go into Lightroom or Capture One or whatever it might be. You can just upload them straight to Instagram. You can print them off like I do behind me, or share them to your website or wherever it might be, share it to friends. So from a casual perspective, it is fantastic. And I feel like if you're using an X100VI or any Fujifilm camera for that matter, and you're not using custom Fuji recipes, you really are missing out, and it's something that you want to look at. Like I said, I'll drop a link in the description to my website where you can check out a few of my, I was going to say famous, they're not famous, a few of my favorite ones that I use. I've got them in a little blog article, and just try them out. And I think you'll be, once you get them dialed in, you'll be astonished at the photos you get straight out of camera, especially if you whack a mist filter on there of some description and get that lovely, you get those highlights blown out, and you get that lovely glow that you can get with that. Now, the next thing I'm going to suggest when you're using your X100VI or any Fujifilm camera for that matter is shooting in aperture priority mode. Now, I love the manual buttons on this, and I think it's a fantastic way when you are using manual. However, again, aperture for me, it just allows you to do what you want really. You don't need to think about, oh, I need to get my settings locked in perfectly, and then the scene's probably disappeared in front of you, unless you're maybe a landscape photographer and you've got all the time in the world. But even if you're someone like me, you know, I go on a lot of hikes, and there isn't always the ability just to stop every 5 minutes and stop for hours either to dial in the perfect settings. So I shoot in aperture priority mode. I don't have an issue shooting in aperture priority mode with this camera. And I think if you lock in the settings, so I use an ISO of 500, which means I get that dynamic range ranging from 100 to 400, which is really nice. And again, I think it gives you a bit of versatility when you're using your shutter, so it doesn't have to go so low. Obviously, this camera does have IBIS built in, which for low light is great. However, I think if you can give it a bit of a helping hand, why not? So I set my parameters depending on the scene or where I am. So I've got different, you can have 3 different ISO settings, and yeah, just get those locked in, and then you can use this lovely aperture ring on the camera, which I absolutely love using, and you don't really have to worry about the rest of the settings. Of course, you've got an exposure dial at the end if you want to change it on top of the settings already. As is pretty obvious to see with this camera, it is a fixed lens. We know that about the X100 series, they've all been fixed lenses. Now, the challenge that comes with that is unless you're gonna put an adapter on like I've got, or you're gonna use the inbuilt crop that you can zoom in, or you're gonna stick a wide angle lens on it, which is the opposite to the telephoto that I've got on, you need to think about composition a lot more. And that was something that I really struggled with. I've always used a zoom lens, doesn't matter what it is. I've had primes in the past, but typically a zoom lens. And to be honest, even if it's an interchangeable lens, you can be changing from 18mm, 50mm, 85mm. So you really need to think about composition and where you can put yourself to get the photo that you're after. And it's taken me a year to really think about that and get good at it. So whether it's taking 10 paces back, or getting low to the ground, or maybe flipping out the screen and getting it from a body angle, or getting it up high, or whatever it might be. I take a lot more photos from different angles than I used to, where I used to just stand in one spot, take loads of photos at different angles, super easy. So I think for people that are coming from a different system, or maybe coming from like an X-T5 or an interchangeable lens is what I'm trying to say, that's something you really need to be conscious of and get good at as quickly as possible, because you'll find your photos will then become a hell of a lot better once you get good at that. And it was, like I said, something I really struggled with to start with, and I was wondering when I got this, I was like, oh, have I made a bit of a mistake with it? But now I've gotten good at my composition, or better. I wouldn't say I'm really good, but now I've gotten better at my composition. My photos are definitely thanking me for it. Next thing I'm going to talk about is setting. Now, this setting isn't unique to this camera, and it isn't unique to Fujifilm, but it's a setting that I very recently discovered, and I'm very grateful that I've discovered it, because I use it quite a lot now, and I'm really happy with the results that I get from it. And that is metering modes. And for me, I've always just stuck it in multi. I haven't really ever touched it, whether that be using a Sony, Fujifilm, whatever camera system. I've always just left it on multi, because if you watch a YouTube tutorial, any video, or watch a blog, read any blog, they always just recommend putting it in multi. However, I find sometimes that when you're in multi, I go on Instagram and I see some of these photos that other creators are getting, where they've got these lovely crushed blacks and they've got these lovely silhouettes, and I'm like, how are you getting using this camera? Because I don't seem to be able to replicate that whilst keeping the subject perfectly exposed. From my eye, they seem to be using spot metering. Now, I've been testing it out quite a bit, and you really want to be using this in really harsh sunlights, because that's where you'll crush the blacks but keep whatever you want exposed. But I've been playing around with it and testing it, and yeah, you get some really nice results from that. Now, whilst I don't think you need to be copying what everyone else is doing, of course not, I think it's important to, if you like that style and you like that look, or maybe you've been trying to replicate that and you're like, how do I do that? I haven't been doing it. Then I would think about exploring your multi-metering modes in your camera settings, tweak around with them, play around the house, find a sunny spot of your house, maybe like a window, and you can play around with it. Obviously, you've got a little joystick at the back here, so you can move your little focus box around, and that's where the spot metering works. And I wouldn't leave it on, definitely don't leave it on for everything, because your photos might do some weird things and be out of exposure and not look great, but it's definitely an option if you want to improve and get those nice crushed blacks, and obviously elevate the photography and the photos that you're getting out of your X100VI. Next one is, so if you followed all the tips that I've just talked about, you've gone out, maybe you've done some street photography, you come back, put the SD card in, and you are expecting all the photos that you've taken of the day to be amazing, Instagram worthy. You've filled up your SD card, you've got 500 photos, and they're all fantastic. That simply isn't the case. I think with Instagram, websites, things like that, and this is something I might do a video on, but the photos that you generally take even if you're a very good photographer, and I know other photographers that have talked about this subject, most of them are crap. Most of the photos that we take on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, yearly, are rubbish. I mean, I save them and back them all up anyway, but they're rubbish. Some of them, maybe I'll go back to and they might not be so bad, but for the most part, a lot of them aren't Instagram worthy, let's say. And that's what you need to remember. Just because you bought this camera, followed all my tips, maybe watched someone else's video. I mean, I don't know why you would, but if you've watched someone else's video and you're thinking, right, I'm absolutely gonna crush it now, I've got all the gear, I'm gonna take some amazing photos. Of course, everything is subjective in life, and photography is extremely subjective in terms of what you like, what you think is good, what I think is good. It all depends on what you like. But don't expect every photo you're going to take to be amazing. That's never been the case in photography. And just because you picked up this amazing camera doesn't mean that every photo you're going to take is going to be amazing. There's going to be some really bad ones, but some really good ones as well. So don't get disheartened at the same time because 10 of them you think are good out of 1,000. The fact is, if you didn't go out and you didn't take those 1,000 photos, you wouldn't have those 10 that you're really happy with. And then after a year, you might have 1,000 photos that you're really happy with. So, you know, think about it like that. Just change your perspective on it. Last thing I want to talk about might seem like a really obvious one, but take your camera out with you. You know, I think a lot of people think they need to take their camera out in the perfect condition, or if you're lucky enough to take your camera out when you're alone. God forbid I'm ever alone and I can go take some photos. But, you know, even if the girlfriend, the missus, whoever it might be, says, I want to pop to the shops or I want to do whatever, take your camera with you. I mean, they might not be the best photos you can take in Tesco's, but the fact is you don't know what photos you might end up seeing or what you might see along the way. So I always take my camera with me everywhere, whether I leave it in the car maybe or whatever it might be. I've always got my camera to hand so I can take those photos. Maybe I never share them with you guys, maybe I never share them on Instagram, but the fact is I'm always taking photos and I'm always developing. And it's like anything. If you play a video game for 5 hours, let's say it's Call of Duty, you play it for 5 hours, you're not probably going to be that good. You're going to get killed by kids that are playing it for hundreds of hours. Where if you grinded and you played it for hours and hours and you've done, I don't know, 1,000 hours into COD, you're going to be really, really good at it. So it's no different to photography and using this camera. The more you use it, the better you'll get at using it, and the better photos you'll get from using it. And maybe you'll get then 15 photos that you're happy with or 20 photos that you're happy with. And again, the more you use it, the better you get at it. And that's kind of my biggest point. So don't expect this camera to do all the work for you. You need to do the work, find the recipes that you like, look at your composure and what you can do better. Don't expect them all to be magic, and just go out and take some photos and just have fun and enjoy yourself, because that's all it's really about. Taking photos, enjoying yourself, because this ain't a serious camera, it's to have some fun with. So go and have some fun and take some photos. So if your X100VI isn't blowing you away yet with the photos you're taking, like I said, don't get disheartened. It just does take some time. And if you can follow a few of these small tweaks and tips that I've been talking about today, you'll have more of a chance at getting better photos out of it. I really want everyone in the comments to let me know what their current frustrations are with the X100VI or any Fujifilm camera in general, or anything they've been struggling with that I'd love to try and help you out if I could. So I hope you found this video useful and there's been some useful information with it, and I'll see everyone in the next video. So thanks everyone.